D1 women's athletes. How much body fat do they have? How much muscle mass? And does it matter between sports? That's what this study here looks at that was published in 2021. Here we're looking at data from 278 female college athletes from Towson University who were there between 2014 and 2018. We have a ton of sports represented here. We got basketball, cross country, field hockey, gymnastics, lacrosse, soccer, softball, swim and dive, tennis, track and field, which is split into track runners and track throwers, and volleyball. If you had to guess the top two sports with the most muscle mass and the bottom two sports with the least muscle mass, what do you think it'd be? If you guessed cross country and track runners for the least amount of muscle mass and throwers and basketball players the highest amount of muscle mass, you would be correct. Here we see lean mass, but earlier in the manuscript here, the authors used the term soft tissue lean mass, meaning not including bone. So that's why we're just calling it muscle. As for body fat percentage, I'm going to give you the average data by each sport. Starting off with basketball, around 26% body fat. For cross country, 23% body fat. Field hockey athletes came in with 28% body fat on average. Our gymnasts down at 23.5%. And our lacrosse players a little higher, close to 29%. Women's soccer is just shy of 28% body fat. Our softball players just a hair over 30%, and our swimmers right around 27% body fat. The tennis athletes averaged around 31% body fat, where the track runners were around 27% body fat, and the track throwers were much higher in the 36% range. And last but not least, the volleyball athletes averaged around 28% body fat. One other interesting thing here, if we look at bone mineral density or how strong your bones are, and we look at which sports tended to have the strongest versus the weakest bones, it's very similar to the sports with the highest versus lowest soft tissue lean mass, right? We said track throwers and our basketball athletes have a lot of muscle mass, and in this case, they also have very strong bones, which seems to line up. Cross country and our track runners have the lowest amount, which again seems to line up. But the one that's a little bit different there is our swimming and diving is also near cross country and track runner. Bones respond to force or bending that stimulates the osteoblasts, produces more bone tissue, becomes stronger. We get higher bone mineral density, right? That happens when we sprint, when we jump, when we lift heavy weights, right? And we see that in a lot of our explosive sports. But if you think about a sport like swimming, right, where we're doing tons of work, it's very challenging, very demanding, but we're in the water, we're not applying tons of force against the ground. We don't see that stimulus, the bones don't bend, and we end up with, fairly low bone mineral density compared to some of these other sports. Very interesting.